Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Biz Dev Live. Thanks for joining me. I got Adam Posner with me. We're going to get into his story. We're going to talk about finding your calling today. We'll be right back after the Biz Dev Live theme.
Biz Dev Live, Biz Dev Live. Weekdays at 11 Eastern Time, live. Biz Dev Live, Biz Dev Live. Weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration, Biz Dev Live, Biz Dev Live. Business development, not even selling it. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is business development, not even selling it. Biz Dev Live, Biz Dev Live. Biz Dev Live. This is business development, not even selling it.
Adam Posner is the founder and president at NHP Talent Group, a boutique New York-based talent consultancy specializing in talent access for senior-level roles within digital marketing, media, e-commerce, product and content creation at startups, creative agencies, and brands. He is also the host of the top global career podcast, ThePOZcast, showcasing experts to help you harness your inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. He has produced and aired almost 200 episodes with top guests like Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, Goldin, and Tucker Max, to name a few. Prior to pivoting into the world of recruiting, Adam spent 15 years working with the NYC advertising and marketing industry. He has led account management and digital strategy at American Express, SiriusXM, and digital ad agencies in NYC like VaynerMedia and EP & Co. From major clients like Verizon, Pepsi, and British Airways. This has instilled him with a unique perspective when working with candidates to truly understand their career DNA and ensure a good fit on both sides of the recruiting equation. In addition, he brings expert advisory around the talent acquisition process, employer branding, and recruitment operations. He has built a strong reputation by always putting relationships first, while balancing his clients' business needs and candidates' career goals. Adam is truly a power connector. He identifies opportunities, synergies, and connects the dots. Please welcome to the show the host of the ThePOZcast and a very positive dude, Mr. Posner, Adam Posner.
Cameron, that's quite the introduction. Thank you so much for having me. I didn't think there was anybody else out there that put as much enthusiasm into the introduction, but it definitely goes a long way. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and pleasure to meet you and your audience.
Thanks for being here. So tell me really quickly, before we get into the backstory here, just how you help people right now.
How I help people. I'm a connector. I connect opportunities to talent, and that's what I do best in the world of recruiting for marketing, media, and advertising.
Beautiful. There you go. Nicely done. So talk to me about what little Adam wanted to be when he was growing up, and how that has sort of progressed as the journey has gone forward. And, one of the things that I'm definitely going to get into with you today, talking about the story, having those moments, today's topic of the story is sort of finding yourself. I think there's many moments where we find ourselves and it changes, right? It's not, just one epiphany moment. I mean, for the person that happens to as a young child and they just know exactly want to be, and that stays, God bless them. Right. But for the rest of us, it's a series of moments, a big journey, and lots of moments of self-reflection where we say, oh, you know what? I like to do this. I don't want to do that. Right. So what was little Adam getting into before we get into some of these rougher elements down the road?
Yeah, well, little Adam was getting into trouble, but little Adam originally wanted to be an architect. Love Legos, still love Legos. I literally play Legos every single day with both of my kids, something I have a passion about. Little Adam wanted to get into Legos. But as little Adam grew up into bigger Adam realized that he liked to talk. He liked to chat. He was a schmoozer. He liked to connect with people. And, that led me to the world of marketing and advertising. Studied that in college. Right out of college, spent 15 years working in New York City in advertising, marketing, and media at ad agencies, at companies like SiriusXM, American Express. And before I pivoted into the world of recruiting, which we'll get to in a moment, my last stop was working as an account director over at VaynerMedia with the great Gary Vaynerchuk. So marketing, media, and advertising were always in my blood. It's still in my blood. It's part of my DNA. But ultimately, what I do, Cameron, is I'm a connector. I see things that people may not see. I see opportunities and I bring them together. And whether that generates a penny for me in profit or it connects people, I'm a true believer in professional and relationship karma and everything in life. And it all comes back to you, what you put out there. So how's that? Is that short? Is that short enough for you?
That was good. So I heard you, and I want to say hello to Sylvia White, who's checking in. Thanks, Sylvia, for checking in here. I heard what you said. You said little Adam got into trouble. How's that sort of personality trait carried forward? How are you getting into trouble these days?
I get into trouble by breaking things. I think you need to break things in a good way to see what works, what doesn't work, and adjust and pivot quickly. And I do that in my business. I do that in relationships. And you have to be able to adjust and pivot real time, because otherwise you're not going to innovate and you're going to fall behind.
So you have this stint, and there's great, you can go search it up, and it's on Adam Posner's profile on LinkedIn, which you can find the link in the comment section, the description section of this video. You have this moment, and I think a lot of people have been there. I certainly have had this moment in my career where, you were let go. I was let go of a company. I definitely know it was a soul searching moment for me. Can you tell us a little bit about that moment and what that caused for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's a major chapter in my story, Cameron, but it's certainly not the whole book. And I've talked about it a lot. And it came at my time, 2014. I got hired over at VaynerMedia, and what I thought was my dream job. I really thought the grass was going to be greener on the other side. And at the time, Gary Vaynerchuk was not a household name, but he was a household name in my world of social media marketing and advertising and influencer marketing. He really was. And I was lucky enough. I interviewed and got hired. And, I jumped right in. I worked on a couple of different accounts, but I quickly found out that the grass was not greener on the other side. And one thing led to another. And, I take a lot of responsibility for not performing as best to what I was hired for. I also take a lot of responsibility for not handling certain interpersonal relationships within the office. Well, I mean, listen, I'm a very different person now than I was 7 years ago, and I learned a ton from that. But ultimately, Cameron, in April 2015, as quickly as I got hired, quickly I got fired, and I lost my job. And, the way the story goes, and listen, let me backtrack a moment there. At the time, I did a decent amount of work directly with Gary, a couple different biz dev opportunities. I got an opportunity to travel, and I learned a ton from him in that short amount of time. And it should come as no surprise to anyone who gets fired for performance. It should not be a surprise. And if it is a surprise, that's a whole different story we could talk about at another time. But when you're not performing well, when things aren't going in the right direction. And if not, you have a major self-awareness situation there. But ultimately, I lost my job. And on the day that I lost my job, I sat with Gary for about an hour, and we really dug into what I do well, what I don't do well. And he said to me famously, Adam, best piece of advice that I ever received and changed the direction of my career was stop focusing on the things that you suck at and double down on the strengths. Because all our entire life, we are taught to fix things. You're not good at math, go to extra help, get math help. You're not good at science, that. But what if we just focus on the things that we're truly passionate about and good at and double down on that? And it would help you exponentially grow. So Gary said to me, what are you good at? I'm good at this, Cameron. I'm good at connecting the dots. And despite what, happened at Vayner, I actually do know a thing or two about marketing, media, and social advertising. So we're talking, and he said, do you ever have any thoughts about, what else you would do aside from this? I said, well, Gary, I have a friend that does, finance recruiting. I have another friend that does healthcare recruiting. And before I could even finish my sentence, Cameron, he turns to me and says, dude, you would be a freaking amazing recruiter. He's like, I see that. I see that being a great opportunity for you. And, the way the story goes, I left that with my, tail between my legs. I had a rough, couple of weeks of sulking, as a lot of people do after they lose their job. But it was a time of self-discovery where I call it my self-awareness epiphany, where I really did have to look in the mirror and say, okay, I was 35 at the time. Been doing this for 15 years. What am I going to do? Go start interviewing for other account director jobs and have to make up some shitty, I don't want to curse, sorry, make up some story about why I got let go, why I didn't perform well there. Why would anybody hire me? And that was a really tough moment for me, thinking about, oh my God, am I going to really change careers at 35? And that was scary.
Yeah. And I think the thing that people can identify with here, right, is you said a whole bunch of things that I think hit for me. When you get to that point in your job where you know you're not into it, right? You know you're not excited about it. And then, at some point, whether you choose to go or somebody chooses for you, it shouldn't be a surprise. I think so many people are in that place with, and this show is for entrepreneurs, right? And, you could be going down the entrepreneur path and you can discover like you're not really enjoying yourself. This is not the business for you. I know for me, I've been doing Toth event staffing for the last 11 years, and I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about the business side of it, but there's certain pieces of the business I'm over. I'm like, I want to move on. And there's other things that I'm good at.
It's natural.
And, right. And so I think everybody goes through those ebbs and flows, and you have to adjust and you have to be honest with yourself. So you were honest with yourself. You took a moment, took a beat.
Took a while to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sylvia says she's good at talking with people. So I think there's a lot of different ways that can go. Susan's checking in saying, Hey, Cameron and Adam.
Some of my Canadian friends.
Canada. Yeah, there you go. So talk to me about, you took that beat, you got this great advice. And by the way, I love to hear, because I'm a Gary Vee fan. I love to hear, because he talks about it a lot, having those kind of conversations with staff, being empathetic and everything. I'm glad that there's some truth to that from somebody that's been through it.
No,
so
it's real.
Amazing. So talk to me about what that beat that you took and that moment, what did that lead to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's important to backtrack for a moment there and just talk about, and Gary talks about a lot too. He was not always like that. And there's a great video clip, which I'll share afterwards of, I was at LinkedIn Talent Connect in 2019, and he called me out when he was on stage doing his keynote. And he talked about how it was really tough for him early on to have that kind of radical candor with employees and give that real-time feedback. That was hard for him. And I was a prime example of that. And he was able to grow as a leader into that. But the beat that I took after that was really interesting, because I didn't just jump right into recruiting. I knew that I needed to do some research and some due diligence. And I went out on I call it my due diligence tour for about 3 or 4 weeks. And I met and spoke with every recruiter that I've ever interacted with. I mean, I've been a candidate many times in the marketing space, and really learned as much as I could about the industry without stepping a foot in it. I learned about the roller coaster. I learned about the financial implications, how it works. And I was lucky enough to interview with a great company called Onward Search that I was introduced to. And I aligned with them, Cameron, because they really believed in my strengths, right? Because a lot of recruiting places that are smile and dial, you pick up the phone, you're making 1 million calls a day, and that's a metric. For me, it was important that I did not have that, because that didn't jive with my personality. I couldn't have someone look over my shoulder, how many phone calls you're making, but really, how many relationships are you building? Laying that groundwork for the future. And that's what Onward did for me. And I also aligned with a great mentor, a gentleman by the name of Tom Hull, who taught me the art and science of recruiting. And that was important for me. And luckily, I knew that I needed to have a good leader. I didn't need to have some 22-year-old kid as my boss. I needed an adult, someone who could really mentor me. And that's what I got with Tom. And that set me up for success.
That's amazing. And being self-aware, knowing what you're looking
what I needed.
for. Yeah, that's I think something big for everybody, being able to sort of look at things. I just went through a DISC assessment, and I think for folks that aren't truly understanding through the job search process what kinds of personalities that they mesh well with, that's a great exercise to go through, right? To really understand, all right, I'm a D. I need to be working with other Ds, or I need to be working with C's that it can balance me out, or S's that can balance me out, right? Or I communicate this way and I don't like this way. I think that's such a big deal, because you could be doing something that you really are passionate about, but you're working with people that just rub you the wrong way, and you're definitely not going to be happy with that.
No, definitely not. But listen, in the same breath, let's talk about this. You can't pick and choose who you work with. If you're working in an organization, there's going to be many different types of personalities, Cameron. You know this, and you have to be adaptable. big, I only want to work with C's and D's. No, it doesn't. That's not the real world. You need to
And
be able to adapt.
entrepreneurs as well, right? You can't always pick, especially when you're starting out.
No
Your
way.
clients are your clients. And you have to figure out, all right, I'm providing this service, I'm providing this product. How do I actually get this to them in a way that makes sense? Because I got to get on the phone with them. I have to interact with email with them, right? I have to do it.
Yeah, you have to be adaptable. You can't be closed-minded.
So let's talk about some of these takeaways, right? You had put together some of these takeaways for us here. Time management tips. Job search is harder than any other job.
Oh yeah.
Plan your work and work your plan. Talk to me about, just in terms of, and remember this show is for entrepreneurs. So the job search, you may be looking for that opportunity to feed your side hustle as you're jumping into the entrepreneur thing. Maybe you're picking up work, or maybe you're looking for that opportunity as an entrepreneur. What do you mean by the job search is harder than any other job?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean this because you're dealing with rejection incredibly more than you would in your normal job. So you have to build that callus in the job search. You have to be okay with rejection. And it's kind of cliche when they say rejection is redirection. I'm not like truly into kind of that, but being able to take feedback and listen to it and adapt and ask for feedback. I think that's the thing. And you have to be grateful for feedback too. I think that's critically important. But when I say the job search is harder, because you have to put dedication, time, and focus into it more than your job, because you're looking for something different, right? And especially if you're out of work, right? You got to be organized. You got to be disciplined. You got to be focused, and not just spraying and praying your resume everywhere, but networking and doing a combination of direct application and direct networking at those companies and industries that you want to be in. That's hard. That's work, and you have to put the work in to get the results that you want.
I love that. Yeah, I think the research piece of getting into anything is serious, demanding work, and it's the thing that a lot of people fail to do. You see young people, and I talk to a lot of folks that are in the college process, right? And so they're listening to their friends, or maybe exactly what the guidance counselor has told them. Maybe they saw an ad on the subway or train, and so they've picked a spot on the map based on that without doing any of the hard research. And if you don't take into account the culture of the organization, if you don't take into account what opportunities exist within the operation, I say it again and again as an example, but I had a student that was talking about his experience going into a college. He went to that college in particular because of a 3-2 program they had, so that he could complete an engineering program in a shorter amount of time with the postgraduate degree. I think there was 2 or 3 people that had been in that program ever, which means it really wasn't a robust existing program that was really meant for any and every student that was joining the college. It was something that was like a fringe program that they really didn't have a lot of good solutions for, that people weren't excited about helping this particular student or any other particular student with, but it was something on the brochure that attracted them in the door. And so it was like one of those kind of bait and switch kind of opportunities or things that come up. And so I think a lot of people can look at the highlights or that one little piece to the business. You talk about your experience and dream job with Gary V, and I'm sure that was part of it. I know I've had that, where I was going from a job where I was working a ton of hours, going to a place where I was going to work less hours, and I wasn't happy, right? Because I was only focused on that one thing, and I wasn't focused on what the actual job was, who I was actually working with, the things that were involved with it. So talk to me about plan your work and work your plan. So you're talking about the job search is harder than any other job. What is this plan your work and work your plan?
This is a foundational piece of advice that I received on my first day from my mentor in recruiting, Tom Hall, before I even turned on the computer, before I even looked at one profile, before I reached out to one connection. He said, every day, plan your work and work your plan. And what that really means to be focused and disciplined. And how I do that tactically each day is I have my to-do list. And however way you want to do it, you could do it on the notes section on your phone. You could do it on your little notepad. I like to do the notepad. And what I do at the end of the day and throughout the day is I write down all the things that I need to do. There's some days I'll get to 100% of them and I'll take my little notepad and I'll rip the paper and I'll throw it out. There's other days when I get through half of them and I feel accomplished. And there's days when I get to one of them and I may feel accomplished. And I know that my day went in another direction. We get curveballs all day, but work your plan and plan your work means I am going to be focused. I know the things that I have to do tactically. I know the things that I need to follow up on. And it enables me to have a clear visual of the day in front of me and what I need to do. And it keeps me focused and going in the right direction. So plan your work and work your plan. You could also level it up to, the higher kind of, spiritual, level up here where it's like, listen, I need to have a clear idea in my head of the direction that I want to be going and making sure that I'm doing those daily tasks to accomplish it.
And talk to me about like the long-term to-do list, right? So for you, what is the long-term goal that you're working for? Because sometimes we got our daily to-do list, right, that are created from, the daily grind, from the emails that are coming in, but maybe we're not marching towards our long-term goal. So how do you sort of, split the difference, right? I know I got my stuff to do today, but I'm working towards this long-term goal. What is and what is your long-term goal? Just so we can give that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. I mean, for me, my long-term goal is to continue to build NHP Talent Group into a sustainable business that will be my legacy, right? And I do that by leading by example. And I want my kids to see their dad, working his butt off and building something that we're all proud of, and expanding my team and continuing to help people, because I can't be just myself, right? I have to build a team. And in the last couple of years, I've built up quite a team underneath me. I made my first full-time hire last year, which has been incredible. And I'm continuing to build and extend into different areas. For example, right now we focus on marketing, media, and advertising. In the next couple of months, I'll be expanding into blockchain, Web3, crypto world of recruiting. And that's exciting to me because I'm also following a passion of mine. So how do you continue to do that? And you do that by ensuring that your micro steps, your micro actions are linked to the macro impact, and they're leveling up to those goals. So you have to have a balance in your head of an entrepreneur. What are those tiny steps that I need to do to keep the train moving in the right direction and ensure that we're heading to the right destination? It's tough. It's a balancing act, man. I mean, this. It's hard. But ever since I knew it, listen, when I stopped working for other people almost 5 years ago and launched NHP Talent Group, I knew that was my calling, and I knew it was the right time for me to go out on my own, to not have someone above me, to work for myself. And the biggest driver of that, which I always knew I had in my DNA, is that I was born to kill. And what I mean by that is you cannot be a real entrepreneur if you can't be successful at killing what you eat. You need to kill to eat. And that means business development opportunities, creating opportunities. Every dollar that I make is because I created it, no one else. And I'm not trying to say that to sound cocky or arrogant, but anybody who works for themselves, you have to have that passion and drive. Because if not, it's not just going to fall on your plate. You have to create these opportunities.
Well, I've always said to myself, and it's not always the most positive self-talk, but I've always said I'm not a fantastic salesman, but I can raise my hand and tell people that I provide this service over here, and it's a service that's needed, and let's go, right? And now I'm getting into a headspace where, if I want to scale, I want to grow, and I want to do some other things, I need to get out of that negative headspace and say to myself, you know what? I am a good salesperson, right? Mm-hmm. I am good at sales, because we sort of tell ourselves things, right? We say, I'm not good at this. I'm not fantastic at that, right? And the Drunken Grape tuning in here. Great show. Love Adam Posner. He's the real deal. So
thank you.
And Susan, here, you need to be the driver to follow through on your mission.
Yep, you have to be.
Having that positive self-talk is such a big deal, because we sort of get into our heads, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. Yes, you can, right? And so if you're not fantastic about it, and right, going back to the advice that you had gotten from Gary V, focus on your strengths. And I know that I, for one, have had to, even right now, getting advice from my business coach, as I'm putting my to-do list, and we got Susan, who is in the comments saying, I do not believe in strict list following. I'm creating my to-dos list, and the to-do list is changing because I'm realizing, you know what? I know that I know that that's something that I've said I want to do, but I can't get my head around it. And instead of like just creating a roadblock, all right, I failed, move on, let me give it to somebody else. Let me figure out another way to do it. I'm not going to do it because it hasn't happened yet. And I'm not going to sit here and beat my head and create frustration and negative energy around something that I'm not great at. I don't want to do. Let me move on and let me focus on what I'm good at. And such a big deal, right? I mean, it's such a big game changer when you sort of get to that place where you're saying, giving yourself the grace to say, you know what, I don't have to do that. I can figure out another way.
Right. Delegate. And I'm a huge proponent of delegating and outsourcing. And the way I think about delegating and outsourcing is really important. Anything that somebody could do better, cheaper, faster, more efficient, I'm going to outsource it. For example, with my podcast, I don't know how to edit. I don't know how to do video editing. I don't know how to create show graphics. Now, I could learn it. I could spend the time to learn Final Cut. I could learn the time to do all that. But somebody else does it better than me. I could use my time more valuable for my core business from a financial impact.
Absolutely.
Right? Let's just say hypothetically, if I could pay somebody $15 an hour to do something in exchange for me going out and earning $200 an hour, that's a no-brainer. And I think a lot of people are either too conscious about spending the money, not having the mindset about cost efficiency, or maybe they think they could learn it and do it better. They're wrong. I think you have to really embrace the concept of outsourcing and delegating.
Yeah, I think the tough piece, especially for entrepreneurs, they want to start a podcast, they want to do these things. And I'm certainly guilty of it, is getting too deep, going deeper than where your means is, spending the money before you have it, that sort of thing. And so you get to a place where, all right, I know Adam's telling me to outsource, but I don't have enough income coming in with the core business. So I want to just take a sidetrack here. How do you manage that, right? How do you sort of figure out what the priority is based on the income coming in?
Investment, right? You have to think about where you want to invest. And this is where things got tricky. And I had to test and learn. It's how much do I want to invest? How much it kind of levels up to a bit, is how much am I betting on myself? For example, and let's get into it. I'll pull back the curtain. So during the peak pandemic, I received an SBA loan from the government. And I said, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to invest it into myself. And here's what I did with that money. I took a portion of it and I invested in a business coach and somebody that I knew and have worked with that was a client of mine, someone that I've known for 6-7 years, someone that I believe in. And it turned out to be a fantastic investment because he helped me put in processes, procedures, and mindset that I took and I implemented moving forward. And it's been a game changer for me. I invested 3 months into that. I invested into the infrastructure. I rented out this office and studio because I needed my own dedicated space. I invested into the podcast. I invested all this equipment. I invested into media buys for the podcast. I invested into a show producer. And all that investment helped me exponentially grow. So it's thinking about where you want to focus that money. But I knew that obviously I have to pay that money back. So this is a big bet on myself. And that's what I did there. So let's get real tactical about that. How do you invest your time? But I think it rolls up to, am I betting on myself? If I'm going to go all in on this podcasting thing, I'm going to freaking do it, man. And I'm going to do it the right way. And that paid off big time. That's just the way, my story goes.
I love that. And let's talk about the marketing aspect of this, because so many people are trying to start podcasts and blow up and go viral and everything. If you're just putting your stuff out on YouTube and on a podcast, what's the downside here? Like, what's the negative piece? What are people sort of forgetting in the whole marketing play mix? You got your niche, you found your thing, you're doing your show, whatever the format is, whatever the time is. What are people missing in the marketing piece? You talk about paid bot ads. I know that's a place that I don't understand well. Where are people missing the opportunity with these things that people are creating out of their home studios, out of their offices?
Yeah, that's a great question right there. And I think it comes down to the first mistake that I made was not building a community and an audience before I launched the show. And that was okay because I kind of did it on a whim and I moved very quickly when I launched back, 3 years ago, February 2019. I said, shoot, I'm just going to do it. I recorded my first podcast on Zoom. I had my buddy edit it up for me and I had it out within a couple of weeks. And it's kind of the analogy that I always say, Cameron, is a plumber with a broken toilet. I spent 15 years working in advertising and marketing. I knew what I needed to do. I knew that I should have built a community beforehand, and I didn't. And I've been playing catch up since then. And thankfully now, 3 years later, I've built up that informed and engaged community. But if I did that from the beginning, my results would have been bigger out of the gate. It took time. Podcasting is a long game. I forgot what this statistic is, but I think it's like somewhere in the range of 80 to 90% of shows don't make it past 5 to 7 episodes.
Yes.
People don't understand the amount of work, time, and dedication it takes. do a proper podcast. And then the other side of it is they get so frustrated that why is only 15, 20 people listening to my show? Why is no one listening? They don't realize it takes time to build an audience. If I showed you my chart, my first 2 years of podcasting, a couple hundred downloads an episode, a couple hundred, 300, 400. It wasn't until about a year ago that I finally saw that hockey stick results when the show really took off. You have to put in, exactly, Susan, you have to put in the time. Nothing happens overnight. Unless you're a celebrity, unless you're an athlete, unless you're a famous comedian launching a show, you don't have a built-in audience. And you have to put in the work. That's the bottom line. You have to put in the work to see the results. Otherwise, you're not managing your own expectations. And that rolls back to self-awareness.
Yeah. And I think the other side of this for folks that are like, oh my goodness, well, that's time. You know, I don't have the patience. I don't have the time. But this whole personal branding thing, right? This whole idea that you create a brand and then you get to control that brand. It's a big deal. I was using the example of Tom Brady the other day. You know, he gets paid millions and millions of dollars. He's retiring. Obviously, we know that, right? But the idea that he could go to zero in the bank account tomorrow and he's going to be okay because of the brand, because he's created this brand. And he's had a lot of marketing behind him and marketing dollars behind him. But that's the point, right?
It's a reputation. It's his reputation, right? And I think that's what personal branding is all about. Personal branding is your online reputation. Let's call it what it is, right? You could call it whatever you want, but personal branding is your reputation. What do people think about you behind your back when you're not on the screen right now? What are people going to say about you and I when they get off this show?
And
that's your brand.
Greatness, right? It speaks to greatness because Tom Brady wouldn't be the quarterback. Because I mean, when you talk about physical traits, and obviously he's a gorgeous physical specimen, and the idea that he's had longevity in this thing. But you can talk about people that, and Susan's saying he's coming back, and I don't want to get too deep down here, but the idea that whoever you're talking about that really has longevity in their space. You know, you talk about Gary V, who's been doing it for a while. You talk about some of these people that the reputation, right? The persona matches what you see in real life, that personal branding piece of it, that authenticity that they bring to the game. It plays, right? You know, when you start up a company, if you're one way to the public, another way, it comes out, right? It really comes out. And when you own your brand, you're going to have more success, right? Because people know what they're getting. The expectation's been set. And if you can deliver on that, which if you've been being yourself the whole time, right, it becomes easy.
That's
and I don't
authenticity, but that's part of that is authenticity, right? It's so easy to be yourself when you're not trying to be anything else. It takes so much effort to be something that you're not. It takes so much effort to put up that facade and the energy that's required for that. When you just focus on being yourself, man, it's just natural.
Right. And it becomes easier, right? And we talk about like it takes a lot of effort and energy to do these kind of things, but it takes less energy if you're yourself, right? And I think you have to have a certain amount of belief in yourself, a certain sense of self-worth, and that comes from getting rid of the negative talk, right? I'm not good at sales. I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that, right? And just saying, hey, can I hold up a phone and film myself? Can I plug in a microphone and push the damn button? And as my friend Brian Fanzo loves to say, I love that. Just push the damn button, right? So many people are caught up on that. Let's talk about time management tips. We talked a little bit about the to-do list, the working your plan, the job search is harder. How do you manage your time? Obviously, you're fitting a lot in. You're running your company. You're doing this podcast. It's tremendous, by the way. I love the shorts. It inspires me because I'm like, oh man, I gotta figure out those pieces to create short form content. Yeah.
I mean, it comes down to blocking and tackling. It really comes out to looking at your calendar and advice from one of my mentors, Dave Meltzer, is to be a student of your calendar, and that's why I don't believe in Calendly links. Right, just to get into it. I don't like giving my availability to somebody and saying, you pick a time. I know at certain points of the day in the morning that I like to do, let's just say hypothetically, in the morning, I'm going to do all my podcast work. I'm going to follow up, make sure things are going in the right direction. From 10 to 12, I'm going to be doing sourcing. 12 to 1 is business development. I'm just making this up right here. But knowing what I do during the day, I know that I like to talk to candidates either from 10 to 12 or from 3 to 5. I know that's when my energy is good. That's when I know I'm going to give it my best. So understanding yourself, what parts of the day do I like to do certain things, and managing your calendar, being a student of it.
Let
Blocking it out.
me hit you
Please.
with this because I use Calendly, and so just for anybody,
Different industries too, by the way. Side note, right? It works with different people.
You can set your Calendly
right
to a specific block. So there's some people that put out their calendar, and it's like you can pick any time in their day, all day. And so that's what I think Adam is talking about. Like, hey,
you can do that. You can. Don't get me wrong. I just
maybe not the best way to manage your time.
No, it's fine. But I just say, like, if I want to get real tactical about it, for example, I'm a recruiter, and when I'm talking to candidates, I'll be like, I am available tomorrow between 3 and 5, or Friday between 10 and 1. Let them pick that time.
Yes.
Right. Versus opening up my whole calendar, or I'll give them a couple of specific times. It's just a personal thing. And I've learned to be, not everyone could do that. Some people love giving the Calendly link. I just have too many things going on, and I like to control it. It's a little bit of the OCD part of it.
No, you can set up, I just want to give you this hack. And for folks that are looking at it, you can use a Calendly link. And one of the reasons that I love Calendly, just from the productivity side, because I have set times for, what I like to call bond or face-to-face time, where I'm just getting to know somebody. So that's a very specific time in a week. I set an hour block for it each week, and there's no more to it, and it goes out for weeks, and you can book that time. So I let the serendipity happen, right? Get a meeting on the calendar, that sort of thing. But with, client calls or recruiting, if it's a client, I'm just taking the call.
You take it when it comes.
Right. And if it's something where, I'm doing interviews or things, I've set time blocks in there where they can pick from that time. And I know what time is available. And to your point, the energy of the day, Susan was chiming in there with that same, right, plan according to your energy of the day. I don't want to take meetings at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock.
No, because you're not your best. You're focused on family and everything else at the end of the day. You want to kind of wind your eye. You want to have that, like for me, I agree too, unless there has to be a reason for a meeting after 4 o'clock. That's when I'm winding down, tying up loose ends, getting prepared for the next day, getting that final push out the door. And then I know when I'm shutting down. There's nothing worse. I'll talk about this for a second. I had a client recently that wanted to put a daily 5 to 5:30 stand-up status meeting on every single day. Now, there's a balance between, they're the client, and pushing back and being like, exactly, Susan, nobody wants to have a 5 o'clock on a Friday meeting. And we had it a few weeks back, and I said, I am done with this. I had my kids screaming downstairs because it's the end of the day, the weekend. The nanny was heading out the door. I had to get her out the door. And I'm like, these are boundaries, and you have to set the boundaries. And I pushed back, and I said, you want to do this meeting? We're going to have to do it before 3 o'clock. And they agreed to that. So don't be scared to push back either. Everyone's human here. Everyone gets it. Yeah, maybe it was just easier for them to set that calendar is every day, 5 to 5:15. It was just easier instead of really thinking about the implications of a daily 5 o'clock meeting on a Friday.
No, I think it's really interesting too, in terms of like setting up your time. If you've got restrictions and people want to work with you, they'll figure it out. They will figure it out, right?
Yeah, it's if you want to make it happen, you make it happen.
And I think that, and tell me what the conversation, because you're in this recruitment space, do you respect, because obviously, we're trying to hire somebody for a role, getting into that position, you're trying to hire somebody. Do you respect a candidate more if they have hard boundaries or less?
It's a balancing act, man, because it depends on, like, let's get tactical here. There's active candidates and passive candidates. Active candidates are the ones that reply to your job ads, the ones that reply to your outreach, the ones that are coming in inbound. That's an active candidate. A passive candidate is somebody that you reach out to who may not be on the job market. If someone is a passive candidate, I'm more inclined and flexible with the time because I know that they're trying to make the time for me, versus an active candidate, someone who's on the job search, they should have a little bit more flexibility. So if a passive candidate who I think is spot on says, listen, Adam, the only time I could talk is Tuesday at 7 o'clock. I'm tied up. I will make that time. So it's about understanding where those folks are coming from and what the boundaries are. So it gets a little tactical on that one. An active candidate, an active candidate, I'm going to say, hey, listen, I'm available tomorrow between 12 and 3. You want to talk to me, figure out your schedule to make that work. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just being very tactical.
I think one of the things that sort of stands out for me, because I've hired a lot of people over the years for my staffing company, and going through the adventures when it's not a staffing role and trying to figure that all out, because you go from hiring waiters and bartenders and chefs to hiring admins. It's a different world, right? It's a different mindset, different role, all that good stuff. But I really respect when I'm on the phone with a candidate and they tell me the hard truth. I respect that person, and I'm more likely to reach out and work with that candidate. Obviously, I mean, there's certain things that
Radical candor, right?
That are not going to fly for a given industry or something like that. And those are things that, and I just respect, like, hey, this isn't the role for you. And you help me make sure that we didn't go down a road that we don't need to go on. Right. But that radical candor, as you put it, I'm more likely to reach out to that person for that next role that fits and to keep that person in my Rolodex than to just say, all right, that was a conversation I'm not looking forward to have again. Right. I hear somebody that I can connect to. And I know a lot of people, a lot of people, if somebody gets into your Rolodex, into your time, and you respect them, I mean, that conversation could be immensely beneficial to that person, and it may not have anything to do with the role that's on the table at the moment.
That's called the long-term mindset, and I think that's something that a lot of people miss in this day and age. I think everybody it's a byproduct of social media and wanting to go viral and instant gratification and always on culture that we're in. People are losing touch with the concept of building legitimate long-term relationships, meaningful long-term relationships. And I truly believe, and it's a pillar to my success, that the long game is the only game in town. All of my success in relationships are predicated on long-term relationships. Every single one of them. People ask me, how's your client roster so big? How do you know this person? How do you reach out to them? Because I don't burn bridges. I've only had to burn one bridge in my professional career, and that bridge needed to be napalmed. It needed to be scorched earth because it had to be. I mean, Gary V and his team fired me, and I have a tremendous relationship with. I had dinner with folks on his team last week in Miami. Are you kidding me? Who does that? It's called long-term relationships, and it opens up doors.
That's something that I think from my career, I ended up being fired by somebody that ended up, when I went out and created my own company, they hired me as a company, right? So I was fired as an employee and then came back and was hired as a company to work with people. And people can never underestimate that ability to turn a relationship around. You don't know what's coming down the road. Oh my
God, so good, right?
If I would have freaked out, if I would have, thrown a tantrum, if I would have, cursed everybody out, I was just like, listen, all right, I don't really understand that result. I don't know how you're, I don't know how 2 + 2 is adding up to 4 in this situation, but thank you very much. I'll see you when I see you.
Exactly.
If I would have handled it any differently, the opportunities that came wouldn't have come. And I think that's such a
how you handle it
deal. And, it's really painful. And I know you must run into this as a recruiter when you have candidates that are just shooting themselves in the foot, so to speak, because they don't know how to handle those moments.
No, they don't. But it's also not a natural thing. And I can't assume that everybody can handle it like me. And it's funny too. I mean, I've been let go, fired, downsized probably 4 or 5 times in my career. So I'm a little bit of a veteran when it comes to that. And I also feel it coming. And I can also sense it. And it goes back to what I said before. If it's performance related in a job, most people know it's coming. And if you don't, that's a whole separate conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Handle like a pro. Yeah.
I want to talk about 2 things before I let you go and get on with tackling that to-do list that you got to get to. One is a selfish question. For marketing, podcasts, and that sort of thing, where would you recommend people go first for spending their ad dollars?
I would put my money towards the not as popular platforms. You're not Apple, you're not Spotify. It's going to cost you a fortune. I would put my money towards, listen, you need to get eyeballs on your podcast. If you're not Paris Hilton, people aren't going to recognize your name and know to listen to her brand new podcast. You need to get attention out there, and that's what media dollars do. Same thing as a commercial, right? This isn't a new concept out there. Put it out there, and the money comes back to you. Because if you think about it from a marketing standpoint, the money, every penny that I make on my show on sponsorships, I reinvest into the media. If I get more eyeballs on it, I get more downloads. I get more downloads. I could have a higher level sponsorship. I have a higher level
You're building
sponsorship.
the
I get more
brand.
lists, and you build it up that way. So I reinvest every penny I get from sponsorships into the show production and media costs. The other piece too, which is free, and a lot of people, I want to make it as easy as possible. It's the guest arbitrage, right? I want to make it as easy as possible for my guests to share a show. First and foremost, big mistake that I made is when I launched a show, I thought and assumed that every guest should share the episode that they were just on with me. That's not true. You cannot assume. You don't know their content calendar. You may be a little show and they may have a big audience and like, why the hell am I going to share his show on my thing? But you have to make it easy for them. And I did that by investing into the content. I created micro clips that made them shine, that they would be, it was plug and play. Like if you were on my show, Cameron, I created a great clip and say, hey, thank you so much for being on my show. We're live. Here's a link to the audio. I also made these 3 video clips. If you're inclined, share them. And I'm going to make that guest shine. That. Make it easy for them. Make it easy. And I teach all this. I mean, I put together in the last couple of months the Poz course, which is all of my IP around how I built the show, all the content around it, all my tips and tricks. I mean, I'm soft pitch right here, but literally I'm showing everybody how I do it and how to use the time, how to outsource, and showing how to make a successful show, not just content-wise, but also from a business standpoint.
I love that. All right. And then the other question I have for folks that are in that place where they need to find their calling, right? You know, where they are in a place right now, you know, so many people are quitting their jobs. They're thinking about that next opportunity. What is your advice that you're giving to people that you're coming across that are in that position where they are looking for their calling?
First thing you do is to step away. You need to step away from everything digital in your life. Anything that's a bright screen in front of you, you need to step away for a couple hours, a couple days, however long it takes, and think about the times in your life, professionally, personally, when you're the most happy. What elements of your job do you love to do, right? What parts of it do you really enjoy doing? When did you have the best connections? When did you really enjoy where you were working? And what about that place really stood out to you? And really break it down and reverse engineer what makes you happy and follow that path. And I know it's easier said than done, but we all have one shot at this life, and there's no point in wasting it and doing something that we don't believe in and we're not passionate about. I'm not saying you have to be super passionate and love your job, you know, to the max, but you have to be happy getting up every morning. Otherwise, what's the point?
I love that advice. I love that advice so much. I think the shutting down everything, going out for a run.
Listen inside. Listen in here. Shut all this off. Shut this thing off, you know?
Getting the journal out, self-reflection.
Whatever it takes, whatever your process is, get into it. You know, for me, I'm going to tell you something interesting. My greatest moments of self-reflection are, we have a swimming pool. It's a little bit old, but one of my greatest times is I put my headphones on, or sometimes I don't, and I just listen to the nature, and I clean the leaves and crap out of the pool. Right. And I listen to music. I'm not looking at my phone, and I'm cleaning the pool. And that's when I have my greatest moments of self-reflection, because I'm distracting myself with a physical activity and task, and it opens up my mind. Whatever your process is, whatever your meditative state is, you got to listen to Tony Robbins, you got to put on the Calm app, you got to go for a run, you got to hit the weights, you got to get on the Peloton, whatever it is for you, figure it out.
I love that. It's interesting when you hear people like, I think it was like Bill Gates or somebody who talking about washing the dishes and just being in that moment of self-reflection. And that was helpful for him, you know, that moment. It really can come from anywhere. I know for me, you know, my assistant in the office would laugh at me as I was going out for like the umpteenth time to blow leaves during the spring, because that was a moment for me. It was like, all right, I'm stressed. I'm getting up. I'm going to do something.
Wood. I have a friend that chops wood. He loves it.
As Susan was saying, yes, I do that as well. And also in the shower. So Adam, you've been awesome. And thank you so much for being on the show. I think you've laid out some great advice for people to find their calling, get into some of the hard things of finding their calling. Where can people find the ThePOZcast, and where can they find you? I know I have your LinkedIn link in the description here, but where else can they find you?
Sure. You can follow me on LinkedIn at Adam J. Posner, all things podcast at ThePOZcast.com, one word, and anything recruiting in the recruiting world, it's NHP Talent Group.com. And Cameron, thank you so much for having me. All your audience out there, please reach out, connect. I certainly love to meet new people.
All right. And I'm curious about just one more question. Curious about the NFT project.
Yes.
What's going on with that?
Oh man, what is going on with the NFT project? What is the NFT project? I don't know. It's the idea that I have in my mind, and it's going to be fleshed out over the next year, is how do I utilize the podcast and turn it into an NFT, and not just for the sake of a cool graphic, but what's the utility behind it? And there's a whole separate conversation. And what it's really going to come down to is access to the guests. So I'm going to be working with some future guests on having it be part of a rev share idea, right? When I'm generating, revenue off the podcast, is there a share to that? Is there certain levels of an NFT? For example, if you were a guest on my show, like say there's a few different levels of, hey, if they have the gold level, they're going to get 1 hour of Cameron a month of one-on-one, and he's going to get a portion of it. So there's so many things you could do. It's just about being creative, and it's just about experimenting, and we'll see what happens over the next year.
I have to have you come back on the show and talk about it once you get it all figured out. I'm excited about it.
Awesome.
Adam, thanks for being on the show. I'll let you have the final word to folks for finding their calling, and then I'll play us off with the biz dev.
Yeah, Cameron, again, thank you so much for having me. And everyone out there, just remember, look out for one of each other. Be kind. We got one shot at this, and we're all in it together. So stay strong, and thank you for spending time with Cameron and I this morning. Appreciate it.
Biz Dev Live, Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time, live. Biz Dev Live, Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration, Biz Dev Live, Biz Dev Live, business development, not even selling it. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T, Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is business development, not even selling it. Biz Dev Live, Biz Dev Live.